certainly Coach Hoiberg can have a little grace and get away from, well, if you're not coaching it, you're allowing it, when we want to kind of reprimand his coaching prowess.
Yeah, I think it would. I mean, I think it would be helpful to hear from players on it. I think,
Mike Bruntz for not being a fan of DB's narrative this morning. It's okay, Bruntz. You can give me some pushback.
I guess I'm trying to figure out what your narrative
Well,
is.
it's kind of like sometimes it's on the players and not the coach, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad coaching if it's allowed to happen.
Right. Well, and I think that there's at some point you reach a limit of like what you can do as a coach, right? I would have to imagine, and this is just my one man's opinion. I would imagine that Fred Hoiberg is not coaching guys to dribble straight into traffic and immediately turn the ball over. That's just a guess. I don't know. I think at some point your players just need to do it. Like that's where Nebraska is at. And when Bryce is able to do, take over games and things like that, I mean that's the players doing it. I mean, I guess I don't know at this point, if you're Fred Hoiberg, like what buttons are there left to push? I mean, you smash your hand through a whiteboard and everybody's kind of making jokes about it. But I mean, in my head, it's like, okay, you had to do that at Northwestern. You come out in a just absolute graveyard of an arena in central Pennsylvania.
What was the announced attendance?
I don't even know. Like, did they have one?
Yeah, that was something else.
But I mean, at some point, you kind of are out of buttons to push, and players just need to either do it or they don't. And I mean, it would be helpful to kind of hear some soul searching on that. I don't know if it's just with the way college basketball is now and the way the team is kind of a constant rotating cast of characters. I mean, who's the person that kind of steps up and takes ownership for that? I mean, you would think it's probably Juwan or Bryce, but I don't. There's just not. I don't know. It just feels like you're at the point now where you know what's in front of you. You got 4 regular season games left. You probably got to win at least 2 of those, and that's the math. Like, just go do it. I mean, I think they're kind of past the point of really kind of getting in and you just got to go out and win. That's just where they're at.
Bruntz, is there a way in your mind for Nebraska to get where they need to go in these last 4 games without having some sort of, whether it's public or not, sort of come to Jesus moment led by a player?
Where we're at?
Yeah, I mean, it's where I'm at. Like, if they keep coming out the way they did against Northwestern and Penn State, like, good luck.
Good luck.
Well, I mean, if you play a first half like they've played the last 2 games, I mean, you could get beat pretty bad at home by Minnesota. I mean, that's
right.
That's still out there.
You could get your head beat in by Iowa and Michigan, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, those are. I mean, hell, every team in the Big Ten can beat you if you play like. There's probably a lot of teams not even in the Big Ten that could beat you if you play like Nebraska's played the last 2 games in the first half. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's. I don't know if it has to be a public thing, but something has to change because it's. Yeah, I mean, Burke not being in there, that's hurt them, but. I mean, the types of mistakes that they're making and the things that are not happening are not, just magically solved by getting him back on the floor. I think it'll help, but it's effort. It's, the types of things that you would hope you're not having to be concerned about when you're, 4 games left in your conference season, playing on the bubble and trying to make the tournament. I mean, it's. You should be kind of focusing on the finer things and matchups and not like, how are we not going to turn the ball over? How are we going to look like a functional basketball team? Stuff like that.
Yeah, and let's not – I mean, I know that Berke is a big loss, but, like, let's not pretend like it's Ryan Kalkbrenner. He was averaging 7 points and 6 rebounds. Like, his loss shouldn't make them look like this, right?
Well, that's what I said. I mean, having him in there helps. I mean, it's another big body. I think he's probably a bigger piece of their defense than what he gets credit for. But
Sure.
I mean, the number of offensive rebounds they're giving up right now, I mean, he's not going to magically change that. I mean, that's just effort. It's going to the glass and beating the guy that you're trying to box out. And the turnover issues have been pretty awful. So I think that helps the picture a little bit, but there's some bigger things going on there that need to be addressed. And it's not just like, it's not X's and O's type stuff. It's all like between the ears type stuff, I think.
So, okay. So, and I get it. Like there's some guys that, make a living reading box scores and pumping out TikToks. But if we're going to be one step above that, Bruntz, how do you rationalize, or what do you make of, you shoot 28 of 54, you're 33% from three, your assists to buckets, you had 21 assists.
On 28 makes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're playing that way, would you start defensively to not give up 89? Or I get it, 16 turnovers is the easy one, but relative to who Nebraska is, where do you start if you're going to make sense of the box score versus what you actually saw?
I don't know. It seems like Nebraska's one of those. Maybe more teams are like this, but especially with Nebraska, like when they're playing good defense, like it just kind of it just looks like a different group. The energy's up. They look a lot more dialed in and interested. You get some tempo and runouts and things like that on the offensive end out of it. And it just, the last two games, they were active in the second half against Northwestern. I mean, I think that was part of the reason why they were able to come back, was that the defense was a lot better. They rebounded and just, got some stops. And it's felt like that's been, recently at least, something that they've struggled with to being able to do consistently, is just how do you string together stops? So I'd probably go there first. I mean, I think.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like Penn State shooting 8 of 23 from three and only getting to the foul line 14 times should have yielded 89 points. You just couldn't keep. I'm with you. You couldn't keep people out of the paint.
No, and I think it's probably one of those things too, where teams kind of start to see it a little bit and can take advantage of it.
The opponent.
Michigan scares me a little bit for that reason too. I mean, they probably took notice of Nebraska's inability to keep guys out of the paint. So, yeah, I mean, it just the last two games, the first half, it just looks like those guys have been so disinterested in being there, and you just can't play. You can't play good defense. You can't rebound. I mean, it's just it's not a way to approach a game like that.
We're talking Michael Bruntz, Husker247. Bruntz, if I have to put you on the spot here, scale of 1 to 10, what's your confidence level with 4 games left that Nebraska is an NCAA tournament team?
Not high. But I don't know. I mean, I think it's easy to kind of become a prisoner of the moment. I mean, what do you got left? You got Iowa at home to finish it. You've got Minnesota at home that, I do think those are both games that Nebraska can get if they just show up and play, decent basketball. So I don't know. I mean, I think 2-2 is still very doable. So, I mean, as bad as last night was, there's still the chance there. I mean, I'm not, saying like book your NIT tickets now by any means, but they got to get things turned around quickly here, because you win those two, you're at least in the conversation a little bit more there. And I think that was kind of always the number anyways, right? Like you needed probably 2 out of that last group. Would have loved 3. Obviously, you're going to be challenged to get that, but I'd still lean that they're going to be sweating the decision on when tournament time comes around. So I don't know. There's just something's off behind the scenes that feels like you're going to have to kind of hash some things out as a group or in order to get that done.
So Bruntz, you mentioned something that feels like off behind the scenes. We've had several people this morning and over the last couple of days say it doesn't seem like this team maybe gets along that well or doesn't like playing together that much. Is that a sense you've gotten? It's because we've heard it from multiple people just really over the course of the last few days, and it kind of came out of nowhere, it seemed like. Is that a sense you get at all?
I don't know.
I didn't until this morning, and now I feel like I'm overthinking it because everybody, it's a lot of places now.
I think when you kind of compare it to last year's team, it's just a different group. I wouldn't say it doesn't feel like a team that that there's not the same joy as last year's group, but it just feels like this year's team, it's just a little bit. They make things a little bit harder or things feel a little bit harder than what they were last year. And I don't know. I mean, I think when you're having to bring in so many different players and kind of trying to make all that work, I think you're going to run into that a little bit. I mean, you're going to have that change, and I think they are a different group than last year. So I don't know if they don't like playing with each other. I mean, certainly when you're playing the type of basketball they have the last 2 games, it makes it a little less fun to play with each other. But I don't know. I mean, it's felt like at times, like I said, that things just feel a little bit harder for this group, and it feels like some of the things that Fred's kind of having to talk about with effort and competitiveness and things like that. You didn't hear that as much last year, and I do wonder if you kind of miss a guy like Alec a little bit on the roster, a guy that kind of was he was kind of the pace setter, I think, for that group last year, whether he got credit for it or not. And I don't know that they have somebody on the roster this year that's kind of that same guy that when things just look bad and you need a play or a guy to do something to kind of charge everybody up. I just don't know that they have that person right now.